two top teams are supposedly in hot pursuit of charters, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. suggests removing COTA from the schedule. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. As many of y'all know, I'm not just a NASCAR fan, I'm a sports fan. And this is a very exciting week on the sports calendar. March Madness Sweet 16 begins today. Happy opening day to all my fellow baseball fans. And of course, this weekend, NASCAR heads to Richmond Raceway. We've got lots to discuss today, a lot of stories to catch up on that I've missed from earlier in the week. First, though, I want to show some love to this Hellman's paint scheme. This is what Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to race at Bristol later this summer. Always a fan favorite for sure. The Hellman schemes have slapped in recent years. Go back 4 or 5 years ago, remember when he ran this? It's fine, but not nearly as inspired as some of the more recent designs. I love this. Good luck to Dale at Bristol. I think he'll be a threat to win like he was last year. But that's still a few months away. This week, oh my gosh, Daniel Suarez has a new paint scheme. I point this out only because 1 year ago, Daniel Suarez's Quaker State scheme was in my top 10 favorite schemes of the year, and with this one, whew, they may be knocking on the door of a top 5. It's early, but I just wanted to highlight that great Trackhouse paint scheme. They're always killing it over there. Let's get to some actual news, or actually, let's start with a hot rumor. Couch Racer on Twitter, an account that's usually on top of industry rumors, posted earlier this week, at least 2 Tier 1 teams are looking to expand next season. Charters. Also, Freddie Kraft at the end of this week's Door Bumper Clear episode mentioned that a couple teams are looking for their 3rd charters. It's so weird to talk about charters without a new agreement in place. At this rate, the charters will be obsolete January 1st, 2025. Most everyone is confident a deal will get done before then, but in the meantime, we're talking about buying and selling $40, $50 million pieces of paper that could be worthless in a few months' time. Very weird. Anyway, back on track. There are 6 Tier 1 NASCAR Cup Series teams with 2 charters currently. But before we speculate the teams that may be in the market to buy a charter, we need to establish what teams may be willing to sell a charter. 3 teams immediately come to mind. First is Kaulig Racing. I know what you're thinking. Back in January, Chris Rice, team president, said they're not looking to sell.
We're not looking to sell, Dave. We never have been, never will be, and I don't foresee Matt looking to sell in the next 24 months. That's where we're at.
It's weird that he specifically says 24 months. Like, what's going to change in 24 months? The new TV deal is in 12 months. New charter agreement is in 12 months. Why 24? Anyway, Chris Rice says they're not looking to sell, but hey, Chip Ganassi would have told you 3 years ago that his team wasn't for sale either, and we know how that ended up. Let's just look at Kaulig Racing for a moment. They're down to just 1 full-time Cup Series driver this year, Daniel Hemrick, who's currently 27th in points. The second car has seen AJ Allmendinger, SVG, Derek Kraus, Josh Williams, now Ty Dillon behind the wheel. Kaulig is a young team, but unlike other young teams in the NASCAR Cup Series, I don't think they're getting better. Like, 2311 Racing has clearly gotten better since they've gotten into the Cup Series. They're now playoff contenders, arguably championship contenders. Trackhouse is only in their 4th year, yet they've become a championship contending team. Legacy Motor Club is expanding to compensate for all the new data and information they're getting from Toyota. Kaulig Racing does not appear to be expanding at this moment, nor do they seem to be getting any better on the racetrack. AJ Allmendinger has propped this team up for the last several years. 15 of Kaulig's 23 Xfinity Series wins have come from AJ Allmendinger. Both of the team's Cup Series wins have been AJ Allmendinger getting it done at road courses. Outside of those select events, Kaulig Racing has not been consistently competitive in the NASCAR Cup Series, and now this season, they dropped their best driver, AJ Allmendinger, down to the Xfinity Series because they couldn't afford to keep him in Cup. I don't care what Chris Rice said in January, that signals to me that this team would at least consider selling a charter, or would consider merging or forming some sort of alliance with another team. Unlike Trackhouse, 2311 Legacy, Kaulig does have a very competitive Xfinity Series team. Maybe they shift their focus there. Junior Motorsports has proven you can be a powerhouse in the Xfinity Series and have success. Maybe that's the role Kaulig Racing is destined to fill. We'll have to wait and see. Anything's possible. The second team I think could sell a charter is Spire Motorsports. I know what you're saying. What, Eric? Spire just bought a charter this past offseason. Yes, they did, but Spire has flipped charters before. They've been among the most active since the charter system was introduced. Once upon a time, Spire had 2 charters. Then I think they sold one to Colleague. I think eventually they bought one from Rick Ware. Then, of course, last year they bought one from Live Fast. And right now, that 3rd charter is basically being used to field a Trackhouse driver, Zane Smith. Not to jump too far ahead, but I do believe Trackhouse will be very aggressive in pursuing a 3rd charter. Could Spire just be keeping that charter warm for a year or two? They bought it for $40 million reportedly. Would Trackhouse or someone else be willing to spend $45 or $50 million? Hey, if that's the case, that's straight profit for Spire. Maybe that's far-fetched, but I'd at least keep Spire Motorsports on my radar. The 3rd team that could be looking to sell is Stewart-Haas Racing. The Athletic reported just a few weeks ago that Stewart-Haas Racing and Ford are leaning towards splitting up at year's end. If Stewart-Haas Racing doesn't have a Tier 1 partnership with a manufacturer, I'm not sure running 4 full-time cars is reasonable, especially considering their on-track struggles in recent seasons. You look at their 4 current cars, Chase Briscoe seems to have great support from Mahindra and High Point. Noah Gragson has had a primary sponsor every race this season, seems like some new sponsors are even coming in, and Josh Berry, he's been sponsored every race. That 41 car with Ryan Preece has had the red Haas logo on the hood more times than not to start the year. That suggests Stewart-Haas has funding for 3 cars. A 4th one with no manufacturer support could be a stretch. But we'll have to wait and see. Again, Stewart-Haas could stay with Ford, could remain a key partner, could join Chevy, maybe become a key partner Chevy team. There are a lot of ifs, there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered. Those are just 3 teams that I believe could theoretically be open to selling one of their charters. But now let's talk about the potential buyers. Again, there are 6 key partner 2-car teams in the NASCAR Cup Series right now. I spoiled this earlier, but let's start with Trackhouse. Trackhouse has Ross Chastain signed long-term. Justin Marks says Daniel Suarez isn't going anywhere, for whatever that's worth. Shane Van Gisbergen's looked pretty good in Xfinity so far. He wants to go Cup Series racing. Obviously, Zane Smith is sort of on loan to Spire. Trackhouse has relationships this year with Spire and Colleague, 2 teams I just mentioned, could theoretically be open to selling. That leads me to believe Trackhouse will aggressively pursue a 3rd charter this year. But there is one recent event that's kind of hard to explain. Trackhouse signed SVG to a development deal, I believe on September 13th of last year. At least that's when it all went public. Later that same week, Live Fast reportedly sold their charter to Spire. Both events happened very close together. Perhaps Trackhouse had no idea that Live Fast charter was for sale, or they didn't have any idea that Spire was bidding on it. Trackhouse maybe didn't know they would have, SVG joining the team. They weren't as, interested in a 3rd charter at that moment. I'm not sure, but it feels like Trackhouse would have been all over that with Live Fast. Justin Marks has good support behind him. That team has a lot of momentum right now. You would think that if Live Fast was willing to sell, Trackhouse would have been first in line last year. Charter prices have likely only gone up since then, so Trackhouse missing out last fall makes you wonder what their plan is for this year. But I do believe they have been and will continue to be very aggressive. They've got so many drivers, they need a 3rd charter about as bad as anyone in the Cup Series does. The second potential big spender that I'd like to discuss is 2311 Racing. Now, last week, the Sports Business Journal reported that Denny Hamlin is seriously considering racing full-time for his own team, 2311. Denny Hamlin was on Kevin Harvick's Happy Hour podcast this week and clarified. He said, quote, "I want to end my career with Joe Gibbs Racing because I want to be loyal to the person that gave me my start. But yes, there is a part of me that wants to drive for 2311, absolutely. I think, without a doubt, I'll certainly be racing at 2311 for at least a race at some point in my career." Hamlin said in this interview that while he thinks 2311's cars are in many ways equal to JGR's at this point, there's still more work to be done building the surrounding team. Specifically, he talked about pit crews. So if 2311 does buy a charter later this year, don't expect Denny Hamlin to be the one behind the wheel. But still, 2311 has made many investments recently. Of course, they just opened up Airspeed, their brand new race shop, and they've been willing to test a 3rd Cup Series car at select races, much like Trackhouse. Trackhouse has that 91. 2311's run the 67, the 50 a couple times here in recent seasons. They're testing those waters. The thing about 2311, say they do buy a 3rd charter this year and they're ready to field it in 2025, who's the driver going to be? Like, who does Toyota have that's Cup Series ready? Maybe Chandler Smith, but he's only won 2 Xfinity Series races. I'm big on Corey Heim. He's 21 years old, still a Truck Series driver. Maybe they go out and get an established Cup guy, like when they went out and got Tyler Reddick. But you look at the list of potential free agents, there's Michael McDowell, potentially Todd Gilliland, maybe Harrison Burton, like Brian Preece, perhaps. Like, are any of these guys really moving the needle? I mean, McDowell, I'm not sure he'd even leave front row at this point. Maybe 2311 buys a charter, leases it to another team for a year, and then once, Heim or Smith or someone else is ready or another free agent becomes available, then they fill that seat and bring it back in-house. I don't know, but I do think 2311 will continue to be aggressive in expanding. Not as aggressive, though, as my third potential buyer. That's RFK Racing. I think Trackhouse and RFK are the 2 teams that Couch Racer and them are talking about. No inside source on this, but I've heard what Justin Marks has said, and I've heard what Brad Keselowski has said. Keselowski has openly discussed expansion recently, talking about potentially forming an RFK IMSA team. But before that gets off the ground, Brad Keselowski told Auto Week in January that his first agenda item is to start a 3rd full-time Cup Series team. Like Trackhouse in 2311, RFK has run a 3rd car now on occasion. They introduced the 60 this year. They do have kind of the opposite issue Trackhouse has. Trackhouse has a ton of drivers. They're feeling pressure, I think, to get SVG in a full-time Cup car next year, possibly. RFK wants to expand, but I mean, who does Ford have in their pipeline? Herbst, maybe Justin Haley. Brad Keselowski was part of the group that recruited Haley to Rick Ware Racing. Rick Ware Racing operates on RFK's campus. In some ways, I'd hate to see Rick Ware lose Justin Haley. They've looked really good to start this year together, but for Justin Haley, this would be a huge career opportunity to get to go drive for RFK. So that's just a suggestion, a possibility. Who else does Ford have? Ty Majeski in trucks, I guess. Maybe Ben Rhodes, although talking to him this offseason, he seems contending for Truck Series championships. I'm not sure a Cup opportunity is super realistic. Now I'm just speculating, but I truly believe that RFK Racing and Trackhouse will be the 2 most aggressive teams in the charter market this year. They are going to be making moves, or at the very least trying everything they can to make moves. Who's willing to sell those charters? Shoot, it's anyone's guess. Maybe Rick Ware. Dang, if they lose Justin Haley, maybe they go from a 2 to a 1 car team. That could always happen. I'll throw their name out there as well. It's fascinating. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Who are the most likely sellers and who are the most likely buyers as we make our way deeper into the 2024 NASCAR season. Real quick, there's one more topic I would like to cover. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has never been a big fan of road course racing. We know that. And we learned this past weekend he is not a fan of track limits in NASCAR, which, fair enough. I think the way NASCAR officiated the S's, especially at COTA this weekend, was far too strict. Or at least the punishment for going an inch over the line was far too strict. I think we all agree. But Dale Earnhardt Jr. took things a step forward this weekend when on Twitter he suggested the Xfinity Series should just drop COTA from their schedule. They should run Spring Bristol and then go straight to North Wilkesboro instead of Austin. He did get some pushback from fans, so he went on his podcast to explain further. On the Dale Jr. download, he said he wants a Cup Series points race at North Wilkesboro. And while he says he'd hate to see Circuit of the Americas taken off the schedule, it doesn't sound like he'd miss it too much.
I'd love for the Wilkesboro to have an Xfinity race in points and possibly a Cup race one day in points. I don't want all of that to happen at the expense of Austin, Texas, right? At the expense of COTA. But man, we've got to do something different.
Look, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is obviously biased in favor of North Wilkesboro Speedway, completely understandable, and I would say I am at least slightly biased in favor of Circuit of the Americas. I used to live in Austin, Texas. I've been to that track a number of times. I have a personal attachment to COTA that many fans don't. But if I try to be objective, this rush by many fans, not just Dale Earnhardt Jr., I don't want to make this about him, it really isn't, but this rush by many fans to want to boot COTA off the schedule after one lackluster race is crazy to me. And it signals that the times have changed. I want to play this clip. My friend Jarrett, you may know him as The Iceberg here on YouTube, made a really great point last night during our NWP stream. Shameless plug, next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be live right here on my channel. But Jarrett made a great point that many of NASCAR's most vocal fans today have been trained to have different expectations than fans of 10 plus years ago.
Kyle Busch kind of was talking at Bristol, like how, those 90s fans that like Dale Earnhardt and Mark Martin and Dale Jarrett, and you name them. You have this whole new generation and group of fans who didn't grow up with strategy races, with these kind of long run green flag heavy races that road courses so often could become. And so there is that disconnect. And I think now, and how you had to have that old generation learn how to accept that stick around, learn how to accept the crazy and the chaos and the you name it. I think now you're going to have to see the inverse.
The most vocal fans on social media, and NASCAR does place a lot of stock in social media, they want every race to look like Atlanta from a few weeks back. That's not feasible, never has been, never will be. Fans know that NASCAR desperately wants those viral moments, those Game 7 moments, and when moments don't deliver, fans are quick to criticize. They're quick to dismiss. There are other factors, of course, but it's concerning to me that so many fans, granted just the most vocal fans, but also some in the racing industry. It's concerning that so many are quick to dismiss an entire track after one average race. That's not to say COTA is perfect. Obviously, NASCAR should continue working on COTA. Like I said Sunday night, they need to change the way they officiate course cutting penalties or put curbing and turtles over there. They need to keep working on the cars, different tire, more horsepower, whatever. You keep working on the product, but one average race should not put an entire venue on the chopping block. Did I call for North Wilkesboro Speedway to get axed after the snooze fest it put on last summer? No! Some people did. As we all know, social media often amplifies the loudest voices. Hopefully, more level heads are able to prevail more times than not. Circuit of the Americas should not be dropped from the NASCAR schedule. Not after one average race, and certainly not in favor of North Wilkesboro Speedway, which, as much as I love North Wilkesboro Speedway, all the hype it had last year, COTA outdrew it in ratings this past weekend. Cable versus network TV, the Texas Motor Speedway All-Star Race outdrew North Wilkesboro. We can't always react so strongly to every little thing. Just let things be, at least for a period of time. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest here. Not trying to aim that at Dale Earnhardt Jr. Again, I thought his take was actually fairly moderate, and I get where he's coming from. Obviously, he loves North Wilkesboro. He loves short tracks. He's never been a big road course fan. At least he's been pretty consistent on this. I'm more directing these comments towards just the loud fans on social media by and large who are so quick to dismiss something when it doesn't scratch that itch perfectly one time. We can't fall into that trap. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Like I said, just had to get that off my chest. That's going to do it for this episode, y'all. Thanks for sticking with me. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR news, react to races, rumors, and much more every day, every week, all season long. And a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck to your NCAA brackets, your college teams, your baseball teams. I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.